every person usually behind a microphone has people they can talk to, and none of us have really found anything or heard anything that changes what is being said, that nobody heard it or nobody can substantiate it. Everybody talks about microphones. A lot of times the centers are usually mic'd up. Not every quarterback is mic'd up all the time. I think there's X amount of times they can be mic'd up. So quarterbacks aren't mic'd up all the time. Usually centers are. But you see Marquise Pouncey got over there later in this, just in time to start the punching and kicking after Myles Garrett swung his helmet. So it doesn't seem like there's going to be the audio from this. But I guess I thought the same thing, because all we heard about was Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is pretty much a mild-mannered guy, where we heard his mom in the 30 for 30 said, I want him even to be more aggressive.
Correct. Basically
Snapping. And you're like, okay, what the hell did this? And to not have him say that right away, or at least tell his teammates, this is what happened out there. And just from Jake Trotter, none of them heard it or haven't been told it. That's what kind of says, wait a minute, it's tough to say a week later, now this is coming out, when you were so mad at what you did that you would have thought it would have come out then.
Yeah, and that's what's at stake here, is what we saw happen initially through the incident, and we have all done this. We talked about the rest of the suspensions that were upheld, which was, we looked at the response in this case after we all saw the incident. We said, that's too far. We saw Marquise Pouncey respond, and we said that response is understandable given the stimulus. Like Marquise Pouncey going over there and starting to beat up on Myles Garrett because of what he saw him do to his quarterback, in all of our minds was something we looked at and said, oh, yeah, that's understandable. We knew he was going to get suspended because it's not excusable, but we saw it happen. That's essentially what's at stake here with Myles Garrett, because if this were to be true, and if you have a racial slur hurled at you the way that he would have by Mason Rudolph, all of a sudden we would start to look at that call and response in the same way and saying, well, you're still going to get suspended, because at the end of the day, that action is not something that we can have happening on a football field.
Correct.
But we would at least look at the source and say, well, that's a lot more understandable because of that. So that's what's at stake here. Myles Garrett came out with his statement after everything that happened yesterday.
Yeah. Here's Myles' statement. He said, I was assured that the hearing space I was afforded the opportunity to speak openly and honestly about the incident that led to my suspension. This was not meant for public dissemination, nor was it a convenient attempt to justify my actions or restore my image in the eyes of those I disappointed. He then went on to say, I know what I heard. Whether my opponent's comments was born out of frustration or ignorance, I cannot say. But his actions do not excuse my lack of restraint in the moment, and I truly regret the impact this has had on the league, the Browns, and our devoted fans. And I have to say, from Myles' perspective, if that's what he believes and that's what he is, I think the statement is somewhat remarkable and very, very strong.
Well, it is, but I'm still would be amazed that something would make you snap that much and not say something after the game on what caused that, to say, I didn't want this to be public.
And I forget if this is part, and I know you were paraphrasing some of the statement, but where he said, this is not this is not meant for public dissemination, nor was it a convenient attempt to justify my actions or restore my image in the eyes of those. Because this is now what's happened on both sides, is because we don't have the audio and because we don't have definitive proof on this. I understand the NFL has come out and said, based on what they were able to look at, they don't see any evidence of this. But because we don't have anything definitive, everyone is allowed to judge each of these guys in a way that is now a stain going forward. Like, if you believe that Myles Garrett lied about this, or you don't believe that this was actually said, and it is what he said there, a convenient defense, now Myles Garrett has to guard with that going forward. If you believe that Mason Rudolph said a racial slur to Myles Garrett and kicked this whole thing off, now that is a stain that he would have to deal with going forward. And because we have no proof of one way or the other, and we might never know in this instance, now that's both of these guys get to carry going forward.
Let's be clear about one thing. Either way, it's awful. If Mason Rudolph has said this, horrendous. If Myles Garrett has used this to try and help his own case and made a false accusation, that's also horrendous.
Right.
And none of us may ever know what's going on.
The NFL said they did their investigation. Adam Schefter laid out all the things that they looked into. No player on the Browns heard him say that. The Steelers are saying Rudolph never said that. So by the NFL standards, the investigation into did Rudolph say something seems to be over, and we've heard from both teams. So where does this go now?
That's what I mean. I don't think it goes anywhere. And to Trey's point, it's all bad. Yeah. And I think that's the unfortunate part amongst many other things in this is now it's going to remain all bad for everyone. And this is kind of a, proxy for a lot of things that go a lot of ways in our world, but whatever you think, you are now allowed to think going forward because we lack definitive proof in this situation. Totally understand the idea that timeliness was something like this, and I heard Bomani Jones and Pablo Torre talking about this on High Noon yesterday. We put a value on, all right, how soon are we told? Because people will look at this and say, we heard from Myles Garrett right after this game, and we all remarked how he seemed very calm. It wasn't like he was out of control,
right?
Still, is still really going and revved up off the heels of this fight. We saw Myles Garrett address the media after the game, and he seemed pretty calm, and most of us would look at that and say, well, if this was something that came up, you'd think it would be worth mentioning in that instance. Listen, I was provoked. I don't want to get into it right now. However you want to phrase it, even if he didn't want to, because Myles' statement backs up the idea that he didn't want to make this a big thing.
Right.
According to his statement that he put out after all of this happened yesterday, he wanted this to stay behind closed doors because he didn't want it to be deemed an excuse for anything. He just wanted it to be an explanation of the situation.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app, and for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.